photosynthesis, the very important process. The plants manufacture its own food. Okay. And by this very important physiological phenomena, all the living organisms, they are dependent upon food. Without this, none of the living organism would be able to survive. Not only the food, but also for clothing and shelter. We are dependent on plants, because from plants, clothing, we get cotton, shelter, we get timber, and so many things. Okay. So you have studied that there are different types of crops like cereals, millets, pulses, vegetables, fruits, and etc. Okay. So the most important ones, the cereals and pulses, out of this, the cereals, camp, whose metabolism is similar to C4 pathway. So depending upon this, basically we can say that there are two types of plants, C3 plants and C4 plants. So most of the pulses, they belong to which type? C3 plants. But in cereals, there are few which belong to C4 plants. The most important, the experiment C4 pathway which was identified, it was on sugarcane, sugarcane and maize. Okay. So in cereal crops, there are some plants which belong to C4 pathway, C4 category, and the others, they belong to C3 category. Now the population of the world, as you can see, it is tremendously increasing. Before independence, it was hardly something 2.5 thousand millions. But at present, what is the population? What is the present population of?
Around 7 billion, ma'am.
7 billion. So the population is increasing at such a tremendous rate. So to feed the population, either of India or of the whole world, the production, the productivity has to be increased. Isn't it? The requirement of the food, if you see, in India alone, some few years before, at the time of independence, it was some 50 million quintals per year. And now it is more than about 200 million quintals. So how this demand can be fulfilled? There are some basic nutrients which the plant requires, mineral nutrients, what you know. The most important, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK, which we say. All the crops, they need NPK, isn't it? So this nitrogen, it is abundant in nature. How much percent? What's the percentage of nitrogen in atmosphere?
78%.
Okay. So the plants, they get sufficient. Potassic fertilizers, potassium, it is abundant in sea. So there is no problem in manufacturing this potassium fertilizer. But what about the phosphorus? The phosphorus, phosphated fertilizers, we are still dependent upon import of this fertilizer. Okay. Yet others there are, nutrients which you have studied, these some we have to apply, others they are present naturally in the soil. And now this, coming to this plant physiology. This plant physiology, as we know that it is the basic branch of science, and basically it is dependent upon the fundamental principles. These with the fundamental principles which underlie the plant growth. Okay, so how this these fundamental principles of plant physiology can be used in increasing the yield of the plant if we use these basic principles of plant physiology. Their applications can, if they can be used in agricultural practices in solving the agricultural problems, then we can enhance the yield, isn't it? There are many problems in agriculture, like in pulses. The most important thing is the non-synchronous flowering. What is non-synchronous flowering? If you have, can you name any pulse crop? Because many a times I have seen that students don't even know the pulse cereal crops. What are an example of a pulse crop?
मैं मूंग अरहर
Okay, moong, arhar,
ग्राम
you gram,
बीन
good,
Pigeon
beans,
pea, ma'am.
good,
Lentils.
pigeon pea, lentils, okay, good. So one thing I like to say that the names of the crops at least you should know in English. ठीक है? ऐसे तो scientific should be known, scientific name should be known, but if you don't remember that thing, then at least in English you should know all these names. Okay, and one or two cereal crops.
Wheat, rice, maize, barley.
Okay, rice, wheat, maize, barley, important ones. Okay, so in uh, pulse crops, you have seen the non-synchronous flowering. All the flowers, they do not form pod at a time, isn't it? Moong in moong bean, have you seen that it has to be picked, harvested by hand, and it is such a hectic task. The labor cost is enhanced by that. Okay, and in other pulse crops also, if you see, if all the seeds do not set at a time, then what happens? The younger ones, they are, though they are wasted, they are of no use. Okay, so this important problem in pulse crops. Then there are many fruit crops which you can see uh, when they are very small, like in lychee, mango, and many other crops, fruit crops. You will see that the fruits, when they are very small, they drop, isn't it? It means that there is a problem of or or fruit crop, fruit drop. Even if they do not drop, then they do not mature sometimes, isn't it? Then some of the plants in some crops, you'll see that the vegetative growth is very fast. It's going, but there is no flowering, fruiting. Problems of weed control and many more problems in crops. So all these problems which we see in agriculture, these can be solved if the basic fundamental principles of plant physiology is applied in these fields, isn't it? Or most of the things, like whatever I have talked about, like non-synchronous flowering, fruit drop, fruit set, flowering problem, or when there is lots of weed, how to control the weeds, then in all the cases, maximum cases, if you see that there is some hormonal problem. There can be many others, like photoperiodism is, you have studied light or temperature requirement, photoperiodism, world lines, and many more topics will study in detail. Okay. uh, all these things, so these problems can be solved if one has the knowledge of plant physiology, and these basic principles they are applied properly in the field of in agriculture, then the problems can be solved. Okay. So this physiology, basically last day we told you all told that it deals basically with the life processes of plants, isn't it? So one by one, the detailed role of plant physiology in agriculture will be dealing today. First and foremost important is mineral nutrition. You might be knowing about mineral nutrition. How many mineral nutrients are required by plants? Essential
17.
17. Out of these 17, some are macro elements, others are micro elements. Macros, they are required in some larger quantity as compared to micro. We'll be dealing in topic on mineral nutrients. Okay, detail. But here only a few important points I'll be dealing here. Like um, so there are these, apart from these there are some beneficial elements also which are required by some important crops only. Okay, like for pulses, etc., and and others also. So these mineral nutrients they are present in the soil. How are they present in the soil? The Have you studied any course of soil science, the formation of soil?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Huh.
ma'am.
So you know that the soil it is formed. It takes millions of years for its formation, and it's formed by the weathering of rocks, isn't it? So these rocks they contain some mineral elements. So and when the soil is formed from these rocks, then they are present in the soil and they remain there in insoluble form, and then they are taken up by the plants. And some problematic soil. Do you know about saline, alkali, sodic soil, and the different types of soil in which or acidic soil in which there is a deficiency of nutrients, some nutrients? Have you studied about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Ha. So I'll be not dealing here, dear. Only important point. So there are many different types of problematic soils, which I told just now, in which even if you add the fertilizers, sometimes even if you add the fertilizers, the plants will not be able to take from the roots. Okay, in that case, because these nutrients they get absorbed on the soil surface, they are not absorbed. If unless and until the nutrients they are soluble, and then they will not unless and until they are soluble, they will not be taken by the plants, absorbed by the plant roots. Is it should be in the soluble form. ठीक है? So in that case, foliar nutrition is given. Okay, but others, there are many in which the soil is deficient in some particular nutrients. The most important, as talk about, most of you are from Bihar, many from North Bihar, and in North Bihar there is problem of alkalinity, salinity. There are some areas where there is alkali soil, saline soil, and there is deficiency of mainly iron and zinc. ठीक है? This iron, it is it is in an unavailable form. I told just now that it gets absorbed on the soil surface. Okay, and it is unavailable to the plants. So in that case, the amendment, there is some amendment of soil is to be done, like making some lowering its pH and all. Okay, but it is all these saline alkali soils they are also deficient in zinc. I think there are some students from North Bihar, isn't it? Hello, मुजफ्फरपुर से है ना कोई? There are few from Muzaffarpur, West Champaran, East Champaran, all those areas. Okay, though these soils also they are deficient in zinc. Okay, so in soils which are deficient in zinc, in rice crop, in paddy, a very important physiological disorder which sometimes we also call it physiological disease. We can see it is thyroid disease of paddy. Have you have you heard the name?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ah, so this thyroid disease of paddy is very prominent in North Bihar zone area. You can very well see. बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स हैं वहां से, आप लोग को पता भी होगा, ठीक है. इसके अलावा what I told कि if if some nutrients they are when they are absorbed on the soil surface, okay, then in that case either foliar nutrition is given or some chelating agents. Chelating agents are some organic substances which bind with those nutrients and makes it available to the plants. Okay, so some chelating agents or chelators we can say, these can okay, so please note down the points which I am telling. So the first important role about the mineral nutrition we have discussed. Okay, up to here.
Yes,
Hello.
yes,
Ah, okay. Only Jyoti, only why only this year, or we'll say why not others are say responding? Jyoti, Shushant, Amar, only few students are telling, Anurag. What about others? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Huh.
Yes, ma'am.
Please respond,
Yes, ma'am.
otherwise I'll tell everyone to switch on their video, and then there will be problem then. Okay. So next point. Coming to next point, photoperiodism and vernalization. Have you heard these two names, photoperiodism
Yes, ma'am.
and okay. What is photoperiodism?
duration of light and dark which affect the
Ah,
plant.
flower.
Photosynthesis. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Flowering.
For flowering, certain critical day length is required for flowering. Okay, certain critical day length is required for flowering in photoperiodism. What about vernalization?
Chilling treatment required to induce flowering.
Okay, good. So low temperature requirement or chilling temperature requirement for flowering. Okay. So if we have a knowledge of these photoperiodism and vernalization, the plants they can be made to flower even in off season by altering either the photoperiods or the low temperature treatment. Okay. Sometimes what happens, like for example, wheat is rabi crop. You know about rabi and kharif crops, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Rabi it is sown in,
Winter season.
whereas kharif in, now it has
Summer
been
season.
sown in summer season. Okay. So wheat is a rabi crop. Suppose if wheat is harvested, generally in the month of March, April something is harvested. Okay. And then if immediately we want to sow it and get the next crop, is it possible? Yes. You told just now low temperature requirement for flowering. Okay. So vernalization, there is a technique. If treatment is given. Likewise, photosynthesis. Okay, got it? Then next is photosynthesis and production physiology. Next point, photosynthesis. You may note down. Should I write? Will I have to write, or you're writing, noting?
Ma'am.
At least if you are writing the points, na, if you write the points, then you later on you can write the points in detail. Photosynthesis and production physiology. Told just now that there are two types of plants, C3 and C4, depending upon the mode of carbon fixation. Okay. Now, among these C3 and C4 plants, which is photosynthetically more efficient and why? Do you
C4,
know?
ma'am.
C4 plant because
Why, ma'am?
There is no need of
Okay.
because they do not respiration.
And also moisture कम चाहिए होता है
Okay,
उसमें
okay.
कम लेता है.
And most important is one of you told that
Photo respiration.
photo aspiration. Okay, I'm switching it off because I am unable to listen to you all. So this this C3 plants, they are less efficient as compared to C4 plants, because in C3 plants there is an important process, physiological process, photorespiration. In photorespiration, you might have seen that CO2 is released in mitochondria, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
And that CO2, it is not used by the plants. We call it photorespiratory loss. Okay, but in C4 pathway, when pyruvate is formed, either from oxalic acid, malic acid, we will see only one pathway you might have studied. In C4 plants, when pyruvate and CO2 are formed, then this CO2, it is refixed, isn't it? It is refixed for the formation of starch. But in C3 plants, this CO2, it is lost, it is not used. This is the reason why C4 plants is photosynthetically more efficient. ये चीज हम लोग डिटेल में पाथवे क्लास less than 1% of the solar energy is used for the production of food. Isn't it very less energy? जो sunlight होता है उसका less than 1%. If the whole energy it will just imagine either in the production of food using some other light, like up to solar lights and all these solar lights we are using for some other purposes also, like for generation of electricity, vehicles and etc. For more purposes. Okay. Now this photosynthesis is in production physiology. Yield capacity, it is basically defined or decided by three factors. First one is production, called photosynthesis. The other is storage, that is sink potential. And the third one is control of distribution in plants, or we can say partitioning of photosynthesis. Are you noting? Hello. This production physiology, this yield capacity is mainly decided by three factors. First one is production, that is photosynthesis. Second is storage or the sink potential, and the third is control or distribution in plants, or control of distribution in plants or partitioning of photosynthesis. So, production of photosynthesis, important thing. Whatever photosynthesis is very important. Okay. Do I need to explain this point? There are healthy leaves. There should be healthy leaves for photosynthesis, proper temperature, proper sunlight. All the enzymes should for photosynthesis. They should be in normal condition, functioning in normal condition. Okay. The other is sink potential or the storage capacity. What is the sink? In different crops, the sink, it can be an underground part, it can be an aerial part. Like for example, in case of potato, which is a tuber crop, or a radish, carrot, all these underground crops. What is the sink here?
Underground stem.
The underground modified stem or the underground modified stem or the root. So these are the sink here in this case. But in all the cereals and pulses, the sink is aerial part, the legumes, the pods, even in case of many vegetables, the fruits. Okay, all these, they are sink. So what is their potential? How much is their storage capacity? धान की बाली देखते हो, कोई धान की बाली जो एकदम इतनी टर्म्स आई एम टेलिंग, बहुत छोटे छोटे होते हैं, ठीक है. So in that case, sink capacity will be less. जो rice and wheat varieties are being developed, we see that interest is that the sink capacity should be more. Okay. Then the last is partitioning of photosynthesis. In this, some plants, if suppose that there is a good photosynthesis, all the leaves are equally productive in the sense that photosynthesis is going on well. But if those photosynthesis, the starch, it is not translocated, it is not mobilized towards the sink, then it is of no use. Okay. I told just now that in few plants, some plants, you will see that the vegetative growth, it's very tremendous, very profusely branching. But there is no fruit seed formation. So in that case, partitioning of photosynthase is, or translocation of photosynthase is very essential. The source is, you know, that it is the mature leaf, photosynthesizing leaf. So the photosynthase, the starch which is being formed in the leaf, they should be translocated towards the zinc. Isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is very essential. All these 3 points are clear.
Yes, ma'am.
And everyone,
Yes, ma'am.
I'll be giving notes. ठीक है? आज भी very few, only 70 students are present. What about the others? उन लोगों ने ज्वाइन किया है कि नहीं? I haven't seen. I haven't seen the other students last day. Students have not joined the link this join this group. So I don't know whether they have joined or not. So CR, please look. Okay. I am stopping the CR only. Please be ready for your attendance. Roll number 1, 2,